doing it the traditional way is just like hitting a wall. Like,
Mm,
and you think you're lazy, like you said, that you're too
yeah.
old to learn a language, but it's just no one's learned the language that way, you know. Hi, Dylan.
Hi.
Well, welcome to the channel. First of all, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a big admirer of the channel. So yeah,
Yeah,
thank you for having me.
thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, really. And yeah, let's get started with yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience with languages. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm Dylan. I started a YouTube channel for learning English about 2 or 3 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
which is called Comprehensible British English. And yeah, essentially, it's just to help people learn English, but with comprehensible input. And specifically, it's just me at the moment, so it's
Mm-hmm.
specifically British English because that's the
Right.
only English I can speak. But yeah, it's something I've been thinking about for a while. Um, and yeah, I just decided this is the time has come to stop thinking, oh, I could do this or I could do that, and just
Mm-hmm.
do it. You know what I mean?
Cool, cool. Because yeah, and you decided to start the channel because you've learned other languages through comprehensible input,
Yeah,
right? Or you've tried to, yeah.
yeah, indeed. Um, yeah, so I think I have a language learning story that is fairly familiar to
Mm-hmm.
most people, which is the school story. I did French and German,
Okay.
learned very little French and German. I think the French was particularly bad, and I used to just copy the boy sat next to me, so that whatever he did in the school holidays when we were writing an essay, I coincidentally also
Right.
happened to do. And the German was better because the teacher was a good teacher, but it was a very traditional
Mm-hmm.
skills based, grammar based
Right.
stuff. And then after that, I kind of that was it for me. Um, I'll never need this, and I'll have no interest in it, and so forth. And then as I sort of got to my mid 20s, I started getting interested in philosophy,
Nice.
and in particular German philosophy.
Okay.
Um, so I, I'd read the stuff in English, people like Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, Kant, that kind of stuff, and I thought, oh, it'd be really good if I could read this in German. And I went on to do politics and philosophy degree, and I bought a one of those Hugo. Do you remember that the Hugo German in 3 months books
Okay. I
before
don't
I went
remember
to?
that specific one, but yeah,
No,
I understand
it's
what you
it's
mean. Yeah.
it came with a tape, which was really
Okay.
handy. One of
Okay.
those,
Yep.
and yeah, German in 3 months. So obviously you go through it. I remember the grammar being torturous and just being. Oh, I need to do this. I need to, this is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But in other words, I didn't lack motivation. It's just when I got to and it was one of those books that it would teach you about the grammar, but it would also have little dialogues you could read. And I read the dialogues and
Mm-hmm.
listened to the tape, and
Yep.
that was more the sort of thing I wanted to do. Um, but I was astonished to discover after 3 months, who knew? Um, but I understood very little. I remember walking down the street and where I live on the Isle of Wight anyway. And this, before I got to university, but I say I'd done the German stuff and done this 3 months German, and I'd hear German students. We get a lot of the EF students, EF languages students
Mm-hmm.
come over, German, Sweden, um, and so forth, and yeah, and I could hear them talking. And I remember thinking, but hold on, I've done 3 months. I've done my 3 months here. Why can
Mm-hmm.
I not understand a word? Not even a word that they're saying to me.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, that was kind of uh, a sort of depressing thing. And then I did my philosophy degree, and I kind of meant to get back to the German. Eventually, I went on to do a PhD about Nietzsche, the philosopher Nietzsche. That
Nice.
again was kind of right now.
Now
Now
is
is
the
your
time.
time to kind of crack on with this. And I used to get the text, and I used to get, the English text and the German text, and do all that sort of stuff, and with very little success.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that was really, and I finished. When did I finish my PhD? 2005 or something, so a while back. And then I just sort of gave it up. Really, gave up the. I still carried on doing the philosophy to a certain extent, but life goes on, and I kind of forgot about it really. Um, and then I remember, because I bought a load of German language books, not just like introductions to and teaching you German, but proper
Hmm.
philosophical texts and all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
And then I think it was about 2017, I guess it would have been 18. I was moving house and I had these books, and I said, "Do you know what? It's not happening. It's never gonna happen." I bought into that whole "you're too old for this now" thing,
Hmm.
and just said, "Yeah, I'm just going to give these away to a charity. Well, over here we call them charity shops. You have like thrift shops in America. I don't know what they do in Spain or Poland, but anyway, so I gave
Okay.
those away, um, and then it was really the pandemic that was the kickstart. As I imagine, or I'm given to understand, for a lot of people, the pandemic was. I mean, obviously, it was an awful time, but it was also the time when a lot of people finally got round to languages, because they were stuck at home, and what
Yep.
am I
Yep.
going to do? And so, yeah, that's what I did. But what I did was, do you know that I think it's called Lingoni German? It used to be called German with Jenny, um, a channel on YouTube.
Okay.
Um, and
Lingo
yeah, so
German? Oh.
yeah, it's
R-
Lingoni. I think
It
I think
rings a
it's
bell. It rings a bell, right?
yeah, but
Okay.
it's kind of very grammar based and
Okay.
examples based and stuff. But what I did was just, and she puts the sentences, and then she puts the English underneath and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I watched those and I kind of enjoyed them, um, and I obviously got some input from them. And I remember at one point, one of the lessons, she said, "I've got lots of sentences for you to learn today." And I was thinking, am I meant to be learning these sentences? Because I'm just sat here watching, I'm just sat here watching. So without kind of knowing or being aware, I was kind of doing my own comprehensible input.
Mm.
Um, and I did a little bit of the grammar for things like dative case, stuff like that, but really, I was too lazy to, and I knew that I just couldn't go into depth into the grammar. And yeah, that's really how I started on it, and then I went on to things like Easy German
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. So
Yep. Okay.
yeah,
Okay. So it was a gradual process, right? Like it's not that you stumble upon some comprehensible input video that made you change your mind. It was more of a natural
yeah,
response to to not
yeah,
being able to learn
exactly.
the language, right? Yeah, I think it happens for a lot of people. Like I've talked about my case with English. Like I started watching NBA, I mean basketball
Yeah,
in English for quite a while until I realized that I could actually speak the language. And I
yeah,
didn't know it at the time. I mean, I didn't know that was the thing that was helping me out.
yeah,
But later on, when I started my project, reading the my comprehensive input and so on, I
mm,
realized like, oh, wait a minute. That's
yeah,
what I've been doing for 5, 6 years, not worrying about actually learning the language. I mean, I kind of had the hope that it was going to help me, but I
yeah,
was just interested in the topic itself.
yeah, yeah,
So that's how I got into it, right?
mm, yeah.
Mhm.
But I think that's the other. But that's one of the big things with with comprehensible input is that you don't realize, in a way, you just think, I'm interested in this, I'm going to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also, presumably you were concentrating on the games and you
Yep.
weren't thinking, you weren't hearing I can't come up with any basketball terminology because I don't
Right.
really,
Yeah. Whatever.
you know,
Yeah. A
when they scored a
fadeaway
goal,
or
no,
yeah.
but I know it's basket. But yeah, you're not trying, you're presumably not sat there going, oh, okay, okay, right,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, I
Yeah.
need,
Yeah.
need to do this expression, this, you know,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
you go
interesting.
crazy. You go crazy. I think I wouldn't have enjoyed it if I had done that, right? The
Yeah,
problem is for most people, the only way we know to go about language learning is the traditional way. And that's
yeah,
why, you're you're faced with, I mean, you wanted to learn German, like you said, but
yeah,
doing it the traditional way is just like hitting a wall. Like,
mm,
and you think you're lazy, like you said, that you're too
yeah,
old to learn a language, but it's just no one's learned the language that way, you know.
no,
I mean,
no,
I understand that you can incorporate little things here and there, but the main idea of learning the grammar rules,
mm,
and again, and then there are certain languages like German or Polish that I learned,
yeah,
that I started learning the traditional way as well. That it just, first of all, they're so different, but also then the complex grammar stuff. And well, German is, I mean, some things are similar, or some words are similar if you compare it to
yeah,
English, but still the grammar is different.
yeah. I mean, I
And
don't,
yeah.
I don't think it's like there's that kind of thing of, well, it can be quite helpful, but German is a whole other thing because of the way the grammar is structured, because of things like putting a verb at the
Hmm,
end
hmm,
where
hmm,
you
hmm.
naturally wouldn't.
Yep, yep.
Um, and a lot of the things I learned, like I remember doing, like I remember I'd got into it and I think I got a book. This is kind of during the pandemic or whatever. And I managed to get hold of a book that was something like German for Academics or whatever. But it was good because it had a lot of passages from people like Kafka or whoever else, German literature.
Hmm.
But it also did things, in terms of grammar. And I remember trying as much as possible to ignore the grammar. And then, you come across the conjunctive zwei, the second conjunctive, and you're
Right,
like, well, what happened to the first one? What's the
right.
first one? And it's kind of not that important, but it it interferes with you. But then from listening to podcasts and um, watching stuff and everything, like I picked that up. I picked up that it's
Hmm.
it's the would do this, or I would like to have, or whatever. You can pick all that up, but I think when you it is that thing of it gets it completely backwards. Like it's the wrong way around to do
Yep,
things.
yep, yeah,
If you've never heard it, then yeah, that you're not. But what's interesting? So when I did. I've sort of looked at other stuff. I've done a bit of Spanish and I've done a bit of French as well. German's been sort of my main concentration, and I've kind of achieved what I aim to achieve, which is to be able to read books in German. I think I can probably hold a conversation with someone who's German who doesn't speak English, because obviously once they get an inclination that you're um, that you English or you speak English, it tends to be the case that they'll just switch. But
hmm.
that's sort of a cultural thing as well.
Yep.
But yeah, subsequent to that, I then did a English as a foreign language. I got an English as a foreign language teaching job at one of the EF summer schools here, and they paid for you to do an online course.
Hmm.
And I knew about comprehensible input, and I kind of knew that I had to pass the test, but I knew that it was, well, not ideal. But I remember talking about, learning about phrasal verbs.
Okay.
learning about phrasal verbs and really not being able to remember the term phrasal verbs. Really having to, right, what are
Yeah,
these things called again? Where you
that
go,
one. That
to the of, the verb and then
yeah,
whatever.
like go
Because you're not,
on or yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Go on and all
But
those.
that one's
Exactly. See, I can't even think of like I know they're out there, but I can't think of examples
yeah, yeah,
because I've never had to even think about this. And
yeah.
and it's sort of a bit like with German separable verbs. There's a similar sort of parallel that's made. But
Hmm.
again, with the separable verbs, you'll hear people say, "Oh, do you know how many separable verbs you have to learn
Mm.
in order to speak German?" And
Yeah,
then they
like
tell you, there's 1,000 of this and whatever. But if you again with the separable verbs, it's just picking it up as you go along and
hmm.
just understanding it and listening. But yeah, it was so interesting to realize that there was this big thing that people who learn English are really knowledgeable about phrasal verbs and the importance of phrasal verbs that a native speaker has not what
Yeah.
phrasal what what's that I didn't have a clue. I remember watching videos on the past tenses in English on I think one of those is it like English with Lucy. It's like a big
Okay.
very
Yeah, I
grammar
think so.
based
I think
English
so.
channel.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking I, I'm a native speaker, but I honestly do not understand what you're trying to tell me here
Right,
about
right,
the past participle, whatever
right.
ongoing thing it is. So that was a real eye opener to me when I did the teaching. It was they don't tend to focus on the grammar that much. It was mainly playing games with the kids and
Hmm.
setting them projects and things like that. So it was kind of you could sort of do comprehensible input. There was a textbook which we were told to follow, but yeah, it was just a real eye opener that you yeah the focus on grammar is so I think it's just so detrimental and so
Yeah.
unnecessary, really.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I think it makes you think that it's impossible. Like I remember thinking that, like now, whenever so I have friends in the language teaching space. So
yeah,
not with them, with with friends that are not in the space. When I tell them that I'm learning German, that I speak Polish, they freak out. Like how? And
yeah,
to me, of course, there's a lot of room for improvement,
yeah,
but I can have conversations. I can actually speak the language. And for them, it's like, what are you talking about? And I don't blame them. I used to think the
yeah,
same way. Like if you think that's the only way
yeah,
to go about it, you look
yeah,
at people who actually speak those languages as superheroes or like
yeah.
superhuman
I know what
because
you're saying. Are you a
doesn't make
genius? You
sense.
must be a genius.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And
Exactly,
but the,
exactly.
the one you said about phrasal verbs is funny because it works every time. Like I was just out of curiosity. Every time I meet someone like a native English speaker, I ask them, "Do you know what a phrasal verb is?" No clue.
No, no,
Like nobody.
no.
Yeah. But I'm really interested about I mean on your German journey because that's the language I'm learning as well.
Yeah.
And so I started with comprehensible input, just 100%. I started with online channels. Several of the ones I talked about in the video I
Hmm.
did about German, and that way I got to a level in which I can understand even native podcasts, and I can understand a lot, and I
Yeah.
can understand people speaking. But I'm now in that phase in which I want to start speaking,
Hmm.
and I've done that, not in a natural way, meaning speaking to people in the street, because
Yeah.
well, I mean, I was in Berlin like a year and a half ago,
Mm.
and I got to speak the language a little bit,
Mm.
but that was like my first experience, and I wasn't ready yet.
Yeah.
So I'm especially interested about the speaking part or about how to bridge the gap between input and output because
Yeah.
I completely believe in comprehensible input. Like that's the most
Mhm.
important thing
Yeah.
to me if you want to learn a language. But recently with German and Polish, those two languages
Mm.
specifically, I've realized that We need to talk about output a little bit more in the
Yeah,
comprehensible input community, I think, because there's something missing there for me.
yeah,
And what I mean is, and I ask you about your German experience now,
yeah,
is I can get myself or my students such a high level when it comes to understanding the language that it's
yeah.
amazing. But then bridging that gap, as I said, it's not that easy because
No,
then it's a different animal, as they
yeah,
say in America, right? It's like because then fear kicks in,
mm.
and a lot of other things, but also the physical part of, being able to actually use the language, the sounds of the language. So how was that transition for you when with
Well, I
German?
mean, in terms of in terms of my focus is generally I'm like I've gone through phases where I've been like, oh, I should be able to speak better, or should rather than just blah blah. But
Hmm.
at the moment, I've kind of reached a stage where I feel like it's not, because obviously my priority was with the reading
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
But what's interesting about German is that um, the and one doesn't wish to get too into the cliches, but it's well known that Germans are, they can be impatient, they can be very
Mm.
direct, and they're
Hmm.
intimidating people to speak to in their own
Right.
language, or in the street, as it were. There are plenty of nice ones, but it's like on the Easy German podcast, I remember them discussing, if I go to Germany, where can I speak German? Well,
Hmm.
go to Berlin, no. And I've been to Munich and I've tried it out a little bit, but you go anywhere, you go in I think we went to a Hard Rock Cafe where they just spoke English to us.
Right.
And you go in Starbucks and they speak English and German, and you think, oh, I'll just speak English because that's the easy thing to do. Um, but I feel like that their point was that if you go to one of the big cities, most people will speak English.
Yep.
If you go to one of the smaller villages, people will have a dialect. So it was
Mm.
kind of and obviously they'll understand Hochdeutsch or whatever, but
Right,
that
right, right.
um, it's kind of a difficult thing. Now I think at some stage I want to go and do the whole italki, get a tutor,
Hmm.
and kind of test my level, but I haven't really. And I would say also that I'm someone who's quite shy generally, about speaking, even in my own native language. So,
Hmm.
for example, if I'm with friends and I'm relaxed with friends, but if a couple of strangers join us, so I think with the speaking, it's difficult because I think there are a lot of variables. I think measuring the point at which you can say, right, click your fingers, this is where this is where you are, this is the point you need to start speaking.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, it's difficult because there are some people who are very sociable, very gregarious, and
Yep.
don't care
Right.
if they make a mistake or whatever, and other people who find it really intimidating.
Hmm. Hmm.
And um, I actually have an experience with Spanish when so Spanish isn't. I would say my languages go German, Spanish, then French, um, but with Spanish, my partner has her brother is married to a Spanish woman,
Okay.
and she occasionally her family will come over and they don't speak a word of English. Now, there was an occasion when we were sort of all together, and um, I was actually sat next to them, and I didn't say a word to them, but I had a couple of pints. Um, and
That
obviously,
always
this is
helps.
a recommendation for. I had a couple of pints, and then because of the way it worked out in the cars, I went with my partner's dad, and I went with her brother's wife's parents. So
Mhm.
just the parents in the back, and I hadn't really done a lot of Spanish. I'd been focusing on the German, but I just turned around and said "Que tal la comida?" and started a conversation that way. Um, and I felt fairly relaxed. I knew they couldn't speak English, so they wouldn't say, "Oh, your Spanish is terrible. Let's just switch to
Right,
English
right,
because
right,
we had to
right,
communicate that way. Um, and we had a conversation about the weather. And what was good was that they um, like they were very relaxed about it all, and they were just kind of being, just being nice, like. And and again, getting back to the cliches, but I imagine a Spanish person probably feels more. I don't, I don't want to get in trouble, but you know what I mean. Spanish
no
people are well
worries.
known for being very sociable and
Hmm.
very welcoming and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
German people less so. Not that they're not, but
yeah. I understand.
so
I
they were
understand.
very relaxed and nice, and I made it. I made some terrible mistakes. I realised afterwards and thought, "Oh God, that sounded stupid saying that." But what
Hmm.
was the key point was I understood everything they say, and I was talking to her father, and um, I remember his wife just turning to him saying, he doesn't understand. Hell no,
Okay.
intended. He don't understand. And obviously, I couldn't speak as fluently as well, but I just sort of suddenly decided to say, "Oh, well, the weather here is relatively warm for in England, and blah blah blah." And and just started speaking Spanish to them. And I remember going at some point he was talking about being retired and or semi-retired, and I looked at him and I was thinking he don't look old enough to be retired, and I what I needed to say to him was "tú no pareces suficientemente mayor."
Hmm.
Um, but what I ended up saying was "tú no viejo." But that it was okay because I felt comfortable. And
Yeah.
when it comes to, I, I, it's difficult to think of an analogy and stuff. But I play guitar and I played in bands and stuff. Um, and the point is that you have the difference between being a bedroom guitarist and being a musician who performs on stage or whatever, and performing on stage is a lot different.
Yeah.
In your bedroom, you can play anything. You'll relax. Nobody's watching you. When you get on stage, and particularly if there are other music, this is like the curse for if there are other musicians there, and there'll be something that you can play blindfolded that you will mess up because you're nervous. So I feel like I think you're correct, but I think in terms of get out there. Like I think I watched something that you were saying about might have been the last interview you did with was it with your German teacher?
So it was a German woman, but I mean, she's not really a teacher, just a language
Yeah,
partner. Like we
and I think
we
you were
exchange.
talking about like comfort zone and that
Okay.
thing of like get out of your comfort zone. And
Mhm.
I agree with that, but I think what's going on, and I think Krashen still is right here, is that um, you need to kind of work on your effective filter, or
Mhm.
not exactly work on it, but get in a situation where you're relaxed with
But
it. You're
how?
not
Right, 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 yeah.
you're not tense with it, if you see what I mean, and
Mhm.
you're not thinking, what am I? Oh, what's that? And
Right.
I think it's certainly in terms of certainly in terms of the signs of things. It's when you listen to a podcast, do you find yourself finishing people's sentences, for example?
Mhm. Mhm.
Things like that, where
Yep.
you
Yep. Yep.
anticipate what they're going to say, I think is a good sign that your
Yeah.
level is good. But also, the other thing I'm going to say is that um, some of the problems with, I don't say it's a problem with comprehensible input, but that we often don't get enough input at a lower level.
Mhm.
That we tend to go, right, okay, I'm on super beginner, I've done super beginner, beginner. I can understand this intermediate video now. Oh, this is great. So there'll be things that you kind of very simple things that you will end up not being able to say because obviously
Mm.
the model of the child and is that the child every day is mum saying, "Oh, put on your jumper. Do you want yogurt for breakfast? Do you want this for breakfast? Do you want that?" Do you see what I mean? So you get a lot of repetition of very simple phrases.
Yep.
Whereas I think we certainly when we're learning, we tend to um, rush.
Yeah.
We rush ahead because we're like, yes, this is finally happening. And
Hmm.
there's nothing wrong with being able to understand things that are of a high level, or wanting to understand things of a high level. But you also have to think about what you want from the language. And obviously, there's a balance and there's a problem, because you might think, well, if I just carry on watching the beginner videos for,
Yeah, you're
I
not gonna
won't feel
get
like I'm
anywhere,
making any
right? Yeah.
progress, and I'll feel like, well, what's the point?
Hmm.
So it's a difficult balance, because there's no perfect model for
Right, right,
how
right.
this how this. I think we
Yeah.
know. I think you and I agree, and that we do still have that ability to learn a language that we were always told, "Oof, you don't, once you're 18, 19,
Hmm.
forget
Hmm.
it." Um,
Yeah.
I think we've all got it in us, and we can do it naturally, and we can do it in relaxed circumstances. But also, it's that thing of a lot of the stuff with comprehensible input channels as well, is that people demand to know how long it's going to take,
Hmm.
and understandably so, because
Right, right.
people, there are people who have to speak. They need it for a job, or they need it to do
Hmm.
this, that, and the other, or they live, wherever.
Yeah.
Um, but it's almost like, and I know there are kind of models of X amount of time for this, X amount of time for that. Um, but I also feel like it might be, it's still, I feel like it still affects you the older you are. Like, I'm certainly older than most people. I started when I was plus 40 or something,
Hmm.
learning languages. And therefore, I think I do think you learn slightly slower, but you can still do it. But I think your brain isn't as flexible,
Hmm.
understandably. Um, but I don't know. I think, yeah, it's difficult, because I think I know what you're saying. It's kind of the holy grail is to go from, well, right, the holy grail speak. Oh, I can
Right.
listen to this, I can
Hmm.
do this, and blah blah blah. And uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
what's the kind of leap there?
Yep, yep, yep.
I think Krashen has interesting things to say about that, and he talks about having a language parent. That can be good if you can find someone who,
Yep.
and obviously often you'll have to find a tutor or whatever to do that, but you might be able to find someone local if you're living in the country who's happy
Yep.
to guide you through. And he was saying that he had, when he was learning German, he had a very nice. He was living in, I can't remember. I don't know if he was living in Austria or Germany, but anyway, he had a very nice landlady who would sit with him and have cups of tea, and
Right.
they would chat about
Hmm.
stuff. And he said, she liked to gossip, and it was great fun. Yeah. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think and it's also that other idea that he talks about. He did really badly at French at school, and he had a friend who, I don't know if you've heard this story, but his friend, because they all hated French, and they just didn't, his friend decided to just go for it. His friend put on a beret for their oral exam, and a kind of striped jumper or whatever, and started going, "Oh, bonjour, ça va," just kind of like, but because he was relaxed, he ended up passing this. Like,
Okay.
he was pretending to be a French person, but he ended up passing this thing, and
Uh-huh.
it's for whatever reason that level of feeling comfortable, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you made a lot of really great points. Don't try to remember everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing is, so in that interview you mentioned, I don't remember which one exactly, but what I said is that by just listening and reading,
Mm.
as I've been doing with German for
Yeah.
3, 4 years, you get comfortable in a way that, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love it. Like
Yeah.
I listen to German every day, I read books and I
Yeah.
love it. So the time I spend doing that, it's great. I love it, every single minute of
Yeah.
it. So no one's gonna take that away from me. That's
No.
the first important part.
Yeah.
But then I I personally have the feeling that in the comprehensible input community, and I've done this myself, so I'm not
Yeah.
blaming anybody. We uh, we don't say it, but it's somewhere in the air that by just getting input, sometime, someday,
Yeah.
somehow you're gonna be able to use the
Yeah.
language. And I feel like you're gonna have to be uncomfortable for quite a while.
Mm.
And obviously, I don't mean going from 0 to 100,
Yeah.
right? Like from
Yeah.
just input to going out there in the street and talking to
Mm.
strangers, because that's intimidating enough in your own
Yeah.
native language, right? So, right? But so I think stepping stones, like a tutor, like you said, or I'm using like a language partner. So
Yeah.
we for German and Spanish. She's learning Spanish. I'm learning German. So
Okay. Yeah.
we start with crosstalk. That's crosstalk meaning that I speak
Yeah.
Spanish all the time and she
Yeah.
speaks
I think
German.
on the video there's she's speaking German, you're
Yep,
speaking
that
Spanish. Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
So that's a good stepping stone because it's still just input, but it's
Mm.
more of a real life conversation, right? So it's a little stepping stone. Then you can start actually speaking the language with that person because you already feel comfortable with her or him.
Yeah.
You're not gonna feel as much pressure as talking to a stranger.
Mm.
Or then things like having talking to AI, which is it might not be ideal, but
No.
it's interesting what happens because I've been well, I've done a break now for Christmas, but I was trying to do it every day, and the
Yeah.
first times you do it, well, first of all, pronunciation is way off. I mean, it's in your head it sounds perfect, but when you actually
Mm.
say it, what's going on
Yeah.
here? Obviously, depending on your native language, the languages you speak, you might have trouble with certain sounds or others.
Yeah.
Like I remember those sounds in German, like nicht, that was hard for me at the beginning. So that's the first thing. But also, even though it was AI, so no one was judging me, no real
Yeah. Yeah.
person was judging me. First, I wanted to sound as close to perfect or to native like as possible.
Mm.
And with time, you do relax a little bit.
Yeah.
You start to feel okay with making mistakes because
Mm.
that's one thing about us adults as well, right? Like
Yeah.
we freak out and we want to be perfect. We want to sound as natural as possible, which
Mm.
understandably so, like you said, but it's not
Yeah.
a good recipe, right? So things like that, the pronunciation, the accent, right? You start getting more relaxed, but also there's also something about so with just input, I always talk about it. It does get output started. You start, like you said,
Mm.
you're listening to a podcast and you finish their sentence.
Yeah.
Little things. But from those little things to actually being able to
Mm.
articulate
Yeah.
complex sentences and things like that, there's something, I feel like there's something physical about it too.
Mm.
Like you need to do it
Yeah.
or the ability to retrieve that information and use it in real time. Because
Yeah.
in your head, I talk about this as well. Like when you've been listening to the language for quite a while, you start imagining conversations in your head. I
Mm.
do it as well, at
Yes. Yeah.
least.
Yeah. No, I find the same. Yeah.
And in your head is okay, nice, all right,
Yeah.
sounds
This is
good.
going. Yeah.
Also good, but then you try to say it, and it's not as natural. It's not as fast. Like it doesn't
No.
come, to the forefront as fast as it does in your mind.
Yeah.
I feel like output is necessary
Mm.
to. I don't know if to
Yeah.
practice is the right word, but and I've changed my mind a little bit over that because before German and Polish, Italian, French, Portuguese were the
Mm.
languages that I was learning, which are
Yeah.
Romance languages, like my native
Yeah. Yeah.
Spanish. So they can kind of fool you a little bit because
Yeah.
I feel like you can communicate more than you should, quote unquote,
Mm.
like as because if you as a native English speaker start learning Italian, you might not be able to communicate as early as I can in
Yeah.
Italian.
Yeah.
So it can fool you, right? But
Yeah.
when
No. I
German and Polish did open my eyes, yeah, that was
yeah.
the final point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing about German, obviously, that's what I'd like. I've heard that Polish isn't isn't a walk in the park.
No.
But
Yeah.
um, from the perspectives of German, it's very complex because it, take example for example the genders, the noun genders,
Oh yeah.
and the cases and all that kind of stuff. Um, but I remember watching and again, in the early days, and like, watching the videos, and I think Easy German did one that was like how to know a word's gender in German.
Mm.
And you watch it, and you're like, and it's just a huge list of different endings that
Hmm.
may, or and often it's this usually will be, and some of them could be helpful, like Chen is, Mädchen, is always going to be neutral. So anything with Chen on the end of it is, it, but it was, it's kind of like, are you serious? Like it was almost like a parody. I mean, bless them, they're trying to help people out, but
Yeah, of course.
it
Yeah.
was just what? And how am I meant to remember this? And how am I meant to remember this in the
Hmm.
moment when I'm speaking to someone, or you know, um,
Yeah, it's
and it
overwhelming.
almost felt like because and French I think is similar, isn't it? With there aren't really the tells as much in terms of what's masculine or feminine.
Hmm.
Spanish I think is easier, but then you've got mapper or mano, words like that. So
Exceptions, yeah.
yeah, it's so I think with German, it's just that whole thing of like, and then right, okay, so if I know the noun's gender, I'm fine. But then we right, okay, so but dative case, okay, so there's der, dem, der, is it plural, den? It's so it seems so complicated, um, and I don't think there's an easy solution, but I think that a language like I do believe that the more complicated the language, the longer it is going to take, the
Yeah.
more input you will need,
Hmm.
simply because again you're not getting the hours and hours and hours of simple words that you would in if you grew up as a child in Germany or Austria or
Hmm.
Switzerland
Hmm.
or wherever.
Yeah.
So it's, I agree with you about it. I mean, I think uh, going back to my own sort of quantum leap, my own kind of leap from was with the reading. Again, that's something that and I looked a lot into that. And there's the two types of reading, isn't there? And there's the intensive reading, and there's the what's the other one? Extensive
Extensive. Yeah.
extensive reading. Um, and intensive reading is where you're going, oh, I don't know that. I'll just go and get a
Hmm.
dictionary.
Hmm.
And extensive reading is reading stuff that you're very familiar with. But I had to do a lot of intensive reading to make the. So I did the thing of reading very simple short stories in German or whatever, and it was like that. Well, I need to make the leap, as it were, to and it was painful. It was painful. I remember going through, but I was really motivated to do it. Now the ideal situation is that I go through, and there are German, and there are probably more German readers out there that are graded and probably better now. But certainly when I felt like I was just going right, I've read. What did I do? I think it was is it Ollie Richards? I can't.
Hmm. Hmm.
The polyglot guy who
Think
he's
so.
published a whole series in different languages. So I
Yep.
read
Yep.
those books in German, and then it is that kind of leap. And then I think I started with probably a Harry Potter or something like that. But it was painful, when it
Yes.
was like, this is not the way to do it. This isn't the way to do it, because the way to do it is to go, you know, Golly Richard's stories, maybe something a bit more difficult, bit more advanced, bit more. Right, you're ready for Harry Potter now, and
Hmm.
there are
Hmm.
going to be words you don't understand, but that's fine. That's how you learn. Um, so I see what you're saying, because as I've been saying, you don't get that daily repetition of very simple phrases, words, grammar,
Yeah.
objects that you would get, and it is. I think it makes a lot of sense what you're saying about, well, you are gonna have to kind of bite the bullet and potential. But I think the problem is there's just not enough research on it, or at the moment I don't know of any, and I think
Yeah.
most of the stuff I know of Crash, and obviously other people have done,
Mm-hmm.
Marvin Brown,
Yeah.
the Thai school, isn't there? But um, more research needs to be done as to,
Yeah.
well, how
I
do
agree.
okay, I'm brilliant. I can, yeah, almost like native speaker kind of. So I think it's I sometimes wonder if we shouldn't learn from those people who start with speaking.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like, well, what do you do then? Okay, so if we agree, we need comprehensive input. We need to be able to understand what people are saying. But what do the people do when they? Is it just shadowing? Is it just repeating sentences? I don't know. And again, I, I I'm a bit skeptical. I'm a bit skeptical about shadowing as well, because
Mm-hmm.
I feel again, in your comfortable conditions at home,
Yeah. Yeah. And
but
you're not the one
what
coming up with it. You're just
yeah,
repeating it, right?
yeah. Because I think I guess I'm generally suspicious of anything that involves memorizing
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that which is what essentially the idea is, that it's subconscious, that it is just,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the other thing Crashing comes up with are examples of people who don't care about a language and accidentally happen to learn it,
Right. Right.
and um yeah, so I think it's difficult to really. I understand the quandary, sorry, that you're in about it, and what how do I get from here to there? Because as
Yep.
you say,
Yep.
with Spanish and like being your native language, Italian's fairly easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
French is a bit different, isn't it? I think, but because I've heard you give
Pronunciation
lectures in
is,
French before, so yeah.
yeah, pronunciation is, but the structures are very similar.
Mm,
So
yeah,
that helps as well. So you
yeah,
can, yeah, you can output before than other
yeah.
languages. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, I think there's not enough research on that part.
Mm,
I understand that is the most difficult part to do research on, I guess, because it changes a lot from one person to another.
mm,
But so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to understand that part because I feel
yeah.
like there's no smooth transition. I
No.
mean, like there's gonna be a struggle,
Yeah.
meaning that you're never gonna be able to start speaking like that, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna have to, struggle through it. And
Mm,
obviously there's stepping stones, like I talked about, to make it a bit smoother, if you will,
yeah.
right?
But
But
yeah, I mean,
the
again,
first
with
time,
kids,
yeah,
they,
the final part, sorry, like the first
yeah,
time you speak the language, the first times you speak the language
mm,
is gonna be
yeah,
tough. It's not gonna be smooth. That's what I
no,
mean. Yeah.
yeah, no, I agree. I think also children get to practice, and no one cares, and they're not only practicing words and language, they're practicing using their voice as
Yeah.
well. So they can just, it's like, and again, Crashing talks about, you start and you do a little bit, and get a little bit, but that's as an adult, that's you
Yeah.
know if you're starting to speak and you're speaking to even friends or whatever, and you say, well, that's my lot, that's all I know, I'm out of this conversation now.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of think, well,
Yeah.
and again, it comes back to that social kind of awkwardness, um, thing.
Yeah.
But I think it, it's very difficult to know how to, like you say, how to bridge that gap, and how do you, like, I guess, how do you research it as well? Like, at what point do people, and I think, should you, like, I certainly agree with a period of silence, but then can a period of silence be damaging if you, is there a kind of train that you miss,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if you know what I mean, where it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
really optimally you should have started speaking there,
Yeah.
but then again, kids different. There's always that thing with parents. It's like, oh God, when are you going to speak? When are you going to
Mm-hmm.
speak? When are you
Mm-hmm.
going to
Mm-hmm.
speak? the kid probably hopefully doesn't know that that's an issue, so
Right,
they probably
right,
have less pressure to worry about it. But
right. Yeah,
I think
definitely.
again, going back to the question thing is, well, um, when you're ready, don't sweat it. But I guess your thing is, well, what if I'm studying German for 20 years and I still can't,
Right,
or I
right, right.
still don't feel ready? Like
Yeah. I mean, I
when is
guess
ready?
you're never, yeah, sorry, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
No, I was gonna say that you're never gonna feel ready. That's what I
mm,
think.
yeah,
And yeah, you were saying I don't think you're gonna miss a train, like you said, but what I've realized is the longer, I mean, this, you're right, it's difficult to know, right? But I think once you get to a point, and for me is when I understand almost, I mean, native
mm,
stuff,
yeah,
and I start building sentences in my head, imagining
yeah,
conversations in my head. It's not the most practical thing to say. I don't know how to explain it, right?
yeah,
But that's what I look at. But
mm,
what I wanted to say is it's not that you're gonna miss a train, but the longer you wait, for me, the more comfortable you get with just listening,
yeah,
and the
yeah,
harder it becomes to start communicating.
yeah.
What,
I think
yeah,
that's
whether
right.
you do it at 1,000 hours or 2,000, the first time you do it, you're not gonna be ready, and the
Mm,
second and the third and so
yeah,
on, right?
but
Sorry.
I guess that's that probably goes back to some kind of effective filter as well in terms of the fact that
Yeah,
getting over the embarrassment of just thinking, right, well, I'm just going to speak and you know, and again, it goes back to your personality, whether you care or not, whether
yeah, yeah.
but I don't think there's a magic simple answer. I'd like there to be
No.
more of a scientific idea of of what's going on with that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Mm-hmm.
like I say, it's that thing where I think there is a kind of, I don't know if dysmorphia is the right word, but an imbalance between the story we've got, which is a good story. We learn languages like we did when we were kids. We just need to hear the language, blah blah blah. But on the other hand, we're not kids,
Yeah.
right? So their development, they have a particular development. It takes a long time, but it's not just that development, because when we're learning a language, we have concepts and ideas that kids can't possibly have
Yep.
yet.
Yep. Yep.
So you can listen to a very advanced podcast, for example, because you have the concepts that
Yeah.
perhaps a child certainly wouldn't have.
Yep. Yep.
But there's that kind of thing where I can listen to a philosophy podcast um, that a German child, probably wouldn't have a clue what was going on, but then that kid can chatter away comfortably, in a way that perhaps I certainly don't think I could comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
It's that kind of yeah, balance, and it's one of those things where you talk about you can use an analogy with science, which is that you the laboratory conditions thing is like, well, this is laboratory conditions here, and it's kind of us at home and or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then but there's the actual and all the theory, certainly crash theories, like, okay, well, you should just be able to sit in front of your TV and then whatever, however amount of time, but then
Yeah.
we also want to know, like, yeah, but when is
Right.
when is the
Right. Right.
promised land? When am I? And
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. I think you're going to have to make a fool of yourself a bit, hopefully with a tutor and not complete strangers, or someone
Yeah.
because otherwise you're. That's the other thing is that um, your effective filter could just be like to just go, oh my god, this has been a terrible experience.
Right. Right. Right.
I'm just gonna sit at home and watch TV. I'm never gonna try
Mm-hmm.
and speak German ever again. That kind
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
worst case
Yeah. That's
scenario.
where the
So yeah.
stepping stone. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No,
No, I
I
was
got
gonna say
finished.
that that's where those stepping stones come into play because you're with a tutor, a language
Mm,
partner, or
yeah,
talking to AI, like I said, or talking to yourself. You lower the stakes. So again, you're never gonna feel ready at the beginning. Well, that's
yeah,
my that's what I
mm,
felt, with those
yeah,
languages. but the pressure is not as high when you're
Mm.
talking to a tutor, a language
Yeah.
partner that you are already comfortable with, talking to AI, sorry, talking to yourself or AI, like I said. So it's a way of getting those practice hours in
Mm.
without the pressure of having to talk to a stranger in the street.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yeah.
like you said, it's also for us, it's frustrating because we have the ideas, we have the knowledge, like you said, of the
Mm.
word. I mean, not the
Yeah.
language, the word,
Yeah.
and we can already express that. We can already talk about that in our native language or
Mm.
others.
Yeah.
So we try to communicate those ideas the same way
Yeah.
in the foreign language, but we don't have the tools or we're not ready yet. So
Yeah.
that's where frustration comes into play, right?
Yeah.
Because you can talk about Kant's philosophy in English,
Yeah.
but you had to do it in German.
Yeah.
The ideas are here, but
Mm.
you don't know how to express that in German.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the
Uh,
philosophy is here, so it's a
yeah.
frustrating part. Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, and it's um. I guess it's just one of those things where I think where you've hit that kind of thing where you're like, right, this is not quite, it isn't quite going the way I'd, you know, has it as it had with Polish and German is not going quite the way it had with the
Mhm.
other languages. So
Yeah.
you kind
Yeah.
of didn't what's his name? Is it Luke? Polyglot guy.
Yeah.
Is it Luke? Yeah,
Luca.
because he talks about German being a bit of a. I think he talks about it being a bit of an eye opener for him as well
Okay.
because he'd done. I can't remember. I think I just watched one of his podcasts a while back. But he talked about obviously he's Italian, so he did English. Well, not so he did English, but he did English and he had a tutor and everything. Then did French but I think German was one of the languages he was like, right, this isn't happening. I need to make more of a concerted effort.
Hmm.
Or,
Hmm.
or what I can't remember how he did it, but I think he felt he needed more input with it, or
Yeah.
he had lots of input and it still wasn't working, and therefore he did a bit more study, or the other
Right.
way around. I can't really remember, but yeah, but it's certainly it's a strange language and it's beautiful language, obviously, but it's unlike almost any other language, really.
Yeah.
And when you talk about English, probably I think is it Dutch? They usually say Dutch is kind of nearest to, or
German. I think
Swedish,
so.
or one of those kind of languages.
Hmm.
But German is really kind of it's a bit more out there, I think. Um, yeah,
You meant similar to English.
I mean,
That's
yeah. Sorry, I mean in terms of what when people
yeah.
when people do those things, they're like, oh, if I'm English, what's the easiest language to
Right. 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 Yeah.
to learn?
Yeah. Because
Um,
like I said, when I started with German, I read short stories while listening to them on
mm,
YouTube at the same time,
yeah,
and knowing English helped me with a lot of
right.
words.
Certain words, yeah,
But it's true that when you have to actually communicate, the subject, verb, object that we use in Spanish, English,
yeah,
Portuguese, Italian, French, that changes in German.
yeah.
So that takes a little bit I mean, of a struggle of more time,
Yeah.
and
But it's
because
odd
for
as well because
European
German
languages, yeah,
German seems to want, like, it has this dative case, but it also seems to want you to place the words in the correct order. And you think, well, if you've got, like, say, like Latin or whatever, or I think ancient Greek, you have all these different cases, but it means that it doesn't really matter about the order
Hmm.
of the words because but with German, it's sort of like it has the worst of both worlds. It has these kind of, which you can mix up the
Okay.
order to a certain extent, but it's also quite rigid about order as well in some
Hmm.
respects. So yeah, it's very interesting. I think it's like with German. I think I think learning it by the comprehensible input method has, like, it really opened my eyes to it and really opened my eyes to language learning. But it is that kind of the question of, well, I can understand this sentence that they're talking about, even though they're using the dative case and they're using this, that, and that
Hmm.
preposition. I don't know, but I understand it. But then can I, like you say, can I
So
spit that out? Can I,
it, yeah.
I can hear this beautiful sentence, this weird,
Hmm.
this language, but I can't, can I, you know, I mean, I think that, for example, things like the having the verb at the end stuff, and kind of modal verbs, and then the verb goes at the end, is it's one of those things where I found that it definitely got to the stage when I listened a lot that it was just what it was a feeling. It was an anticipation feeling thing rather than because I'd read the books that said, oh,
Hmm.
or,
Hmm.
or watch the videos that said, right, here's German word order and blah, blah, blah. But that wasn't helpful. But listening
Yeah.
over and over again to
Yep.
to the rhythms of the language really, really helped me, I think. But again, in terms of reproducing it, it's, yeah, it is harder to do.
Yeah.
But
Completely
I
different
feel
world.
I could certainly get by in German.
Hmm.
But I also feel more intimidated by that idea of talking to Germans just because of the kind of reputational,
Hmm.
and again, it's not impolite or anything. It's just, for example, they would just think, well, this will save a lot of time if we just do this in English,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
oh, by the way, you know they're not intentionally trying to insult you if they tell you that you've put
Hmm. Yeah.
you've used the wrong case, or that's neuter, not feminine, as you've used it there. But yeah,
Yeah, but that's a bit of a curse for you native English speakers because you can communicate everywhere, which is a good thing on one part, right?
yeah,
But if you're trying to learn the local language, that can be a curse.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's also, in a way, it's kind of, certainly in Britain, is kind of the worst thing to happen, because the British are very, or tend to be very, like, oh, we're separate, and then you end up with a language that it's like a sort of double whammy of, like, oh, we're an island, we're separate from Europe, we're not really in
Hmm.
Europe, we kind of are, but we're not. And then you get a kind of thing of, like, oh, and by the way, pretty much everywhere you go in the world, you know you can speak English. It's
Yep.
like, because obviously Esperanto, that was the aspiration behind it, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That would be a language, and then English just ended up. Um,
Taking over. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm interested about your English, because I know it's sort of the story you've told before about it, that this was a real struggle for you. You went through school, didn't happen for you. The
Hmm.
MBA stuff really helped you, but how was that transition to speaking? Because English, although it's not unrelated to the Romance languages,
Hmm.
it's certainly
Right.
different from them, isn't it?
So the struggle mainly came from the amount of time it took
Yeah.
me. I mean, like from age 5 to age 20. I mean, to age 18. And I remember
Yeah.
having a couple of subjects in English in college as
Mm.
well.
Yeah.
So that much time to just be able to pass a language test, but not
Right.
not being able to use the language.
Yeah.
And I vividly remember, I don't know if I was 20, 21, that a French Erasmus student came to my city in Spain.
Mm.
And we don't get a lot of Erasmus students because I'm from a small town, like
Yeah.
40,000 people.
Okay.
And I remember trying to communicate with her in English and just not being able to.
Yeah.
Like we had to switch to Spanish because she was learning the language,
Right.
and that was good enough, right? From
Mm.
from her part, not mine,
Yeah.
I
No.
was so I remember the frustration there. And the thing is, all those years, it didn't help me actually be able to communicate, but uh, that and the fact that the language is not unrelated to Romance languages, like you
Mm.
said, that helped me at least understand what I was listening to with basketball, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the thing with that is, I did it for I was like at least a game every day, so that's an
Right.
hour and a half. 2 hours
Yeah.
every day. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of input, first of all.
Yeah.
And I did that for 4 or 5 years
Right.
until I had to use English for the first time. But
Mm.
there's a little thing that I realized afterwards. But the thing is, until I moved to Poland for the first time, and I was 24, and I came
Right.
here on a university exchange program,
Okay.
Erasmus Europe,
Yeah.
and everything was in English. Like I was in Poland, but the classes were in English. We had international friends from different countries. We communicated in English, and unlike my a lot of my Spanish friends, I was actually able to communicate in language. I
Mm.
still made mistakes, of course,
Yeah.
and there was still a lot of room for improvement, but I could get by. Um, you know, Talk
Yeah.
about what I wanted to talk about, express my ideas, and so on.
Mm.
And also, like you said, with the pints, when I drank
Yeah.
alcohol, it was easier, but that's not the point.
No, no, no.
And it's not, yeah, we don't recommend you do that, right?
No. Don't.
But the thing is, later on, I realized that for those 4 or 5 years that I was listening to the language and not using it before I moved to
Mm.
Poland for the first time, I do remember trying to use it. Um, the little chances I got, because again, I'm from a small town, so I
Yeah.
didn't get a lot of chances to use the
Mm.
language, and the internet wasn't as widespread as it is.
Mm. Yeah.
You know? So there weren't as many opportunities to find people online to talk to and things like
Mm.
that. But I do remember when going out at night, I met a Nigerian guy that lived there, and we
Right.
became friends. I would start talking to him.
Yeah.
Again, alcohol helped in that sense,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
in that at that point. And I remember being able to communicate with them, right?
Mm.
So then when I moved to Poland for the first time, that was the first time that I had to use it on a daily basis.
Okay.
But I try to use it with that friend whenever I could,
Mm.
which
Okay.
was
Cool.
like a couple of times a month, things like that.
Yeah.
Which it wasn't a lot, but I think it was good enough to build my confidence.
Yeah.
Obviously, I had the ability thanks to the
Mm.
input part,
Yeah.
right? But that built my confidence, and um, when I moved to Poland for the first time, I wasn't scared of it. Also,
Right.
there's also a little nuance that my friends in Poland and teachers, they were not native.
Okay.
So it's a bit easier, meaning that you're gonna understand everything they say.
Mm.
You don't have that pressure of a Scottish guy,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
gonna understand.
Yeah.
And then it's it's I mean that part is real, but the part when you speak, that's a bit of a psychological part
Mm.
because you don't feel judged as much as you do when you're speaking to a native speaker. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean they're gonna judge you. It's just what you
No.
feel in your head, right?
Yeah.
Because the other
I,
person
it's
from,
interesting because
you know what I mean?
I've heard that before that people say that when they learned to speak English or they got comfortable speaking English with other people who were not native English speakers. Yeah, that's an interesting phenomenon, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd still take the native input part because that's
Mm.
that's what I want to learn. But that is an interesting thing to look at because when it comes to output, if I was talking to a person from Slovakia,
Yeah.
like I said, I know I'm going to understand everything he or she's saying,
Mm.
but I don't feel the pressure of being judged, which
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
that person might judge me more than the native speaker,
Yeah.
but it doesn't feel like it in my head,
Mm.
right? Because we're
Yeah.
on the same boat. We're both non-native speakers, so that's interesting. But
Yeah.
but once I moved here for I had to use the language, and it was good enough. I was prepared to. I it was good enough to communicate to get my
Mm.
point across,
Yeah.
and through practice and more input, everyday
Mm.
input, I got better and better. So
Yeah.
that's how I did it. Yeah.
That's interesting. But like, so I always think like if you're watching, so it was basketball you were watching.
Hmm.
What was because I kind of feel like isn't the vocabulary quite limited, or was it they were chatting away as well about hey
Yeah.
what you've been doing and stuff like that? So I guess yeah.
Yeah, they talk about the game, but
Yeah,
they also talk about a lot of stuff during those games, because it's
yeah,
not. But the good thing about sports is that, well, first of all, if you're watching sport, you're usually passionate about it, so that helps.
yeah,
So it doesn't feel like learning. It doesn't feel like work, right?
yeah,
And then there's the physical part of it, meaning that I was listening to the commentator explain what was going on and seeing it at the same time, right? So
yeah.
it's
So
easier
you,
it's easier
yeah,
to connect those ideas. Also,
yeah,
you know, a commentator would say LeBron James dunks the basketball. Oh, so
yeah,
this is a dunk. Okay, I
yeah,
didn't know that. Or
right,
and a lot
yeah,
of other moves. And okay, and obviously you learn a lot about basketball
mm,
vocabulary, but they're speaking the language. That's what I
yeah,
was talking
yeah,
about. Like if you watch a certain type of videos, you're gonna learn more about that vocabulary, but you're learning the
mm,
language as well because
yeah,
they're using sentences and like you said,
yeah,
they're talking about life, they're talking about culture,
yeah.
they're talking about other things,
Yeah, because
about
yeah,
gossiping
because
about
that is the thing they
players.
do, don't they? Like commentators go off on tangents and
Yeah.
talk about other stuff as well. It's interesting because I like football as in soccer,
Hmm.
and I watch a lot of that. I watch German football, and I listen. I actually found listening on the radio. There's some good free like radio stations that you can listen to commentaries on games
Okay.
and stuff like that. So it wasn't quite the same thing, but I guess there's also that thing of like watching people play computer games and stuff. It's just that when they're talking about what they're doing, it is really helpful because a lot of the time in life, people don't talk about
Yep.
what they're doing, do they? You
Yep.
don't say, "Oh, I'm like it." You can make a video of, "Oh, I'm just going to go brush my teeth." But nobody does that in real life.
Right. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not it's not that interesting, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's true. But tutorials, how to videos, I don't know, yoga,
yeah,
um, I don't know, painting, things that you're
yeah,
listening to while actually seeing what's going on,
yeah.
and those are really helpful because
But I think
make
it's
the connection.
interesting because I think our story's a bit similar in the sense of like it's almost like you were watching the NBA, but you'd given up on English almost. It sounds to me. Is that right? Because it was almost like you were thinking, well, I want to watch this, so I'm just going to watch it, and it'll.
Yeah. I mean, actually, when I started watching it in Spanish, like a
Right.
couple of years earlier.
Okay.
And then I had the chance of watching it in English. And I was like, well, why not? Right.
Yeah.
And again, it was special situation because of all those languages. Oh, sorry, all those years
Yeah.
trying to learn the language.
Yeah.
My comprehension ability was higher than a beginners, right? Because
Right.
if I want to learn Hungarian, I'm not gonna understand
Yeah.
basketball
If you
in
watch a
Hungarian,
basketball game, it's not going to happen for you, is
right?
it? No.
Even if it's
Yeah.
sport is helpful, but it was good enough to be able to understand. So I started watching it. Oh, I understand this. Oh, this is fun. And
Yeah.
they're from the country where the games are being played.
Right.
So it's even more interesting.
Yeah.
I get to know about the culture and other stuff. So it was, yeah,
Mm.
it's like I said, I kind of had a hope that it was going to help me, but it wasn't really like, oh, this is
Yeah.
going to help me. I really need to do this now.
Yeah.
Well, why
But
not?
I feel like that was the good. I think that was probably the helpful thing for you to be like relax because you were just relaxed about it. All right, this happened to be in English. I'll listen
Yep,
to it.
yep.
What I'm focusing on. And I think one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of comprehensible or channels that call themselves comprehensible input is that they miss the fact that you're supposed to not realize
Right,
you're
right,
learning in a way.
right.
It's like there's and again going back to crashing, I think he talked about um the input has to be interesting, ideally compelling. That word, he
Mhm,
uses
mhm.
the word compelling. So you're supposed to forget it, and you see a lot of channels that have got like I've watched quite a lot of other English channels, and yeah, comprehensible input, and they're just like sort of vlogs, but you have things like a word count on the, a word count on the screen where it's counting off one, word two, word three,
Hmm.
and there's a couple of things wrong with that. One, you're not learning that word from one video,
Yeah.
which is, again, that's the other thing that you'll need to repeat that however many times it is, 10 times or plus, before you can even begin to understand it. But
Hmm.
also it's focusing on the language when
Yeah.
you're not supposed to focus on the language. It's supposed to be a video about something that happens to be in that language,
Hmm. Hmm.
and your viewer ideally is supposed to forget. And this is something I'm trying to work on my channel, because I think I've got videos on there that I kind of think, certainly the first few videos I did, I think I just did a film of a bathroom and blah 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 and put some words up, and it wasn't kind of what I wanted to do. It was just get started. But I think you have to. It's vital that people forget what they're doing, what they're watching,
Yeah.
and just enjoy it,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it does sink in better. Because it is supposed to be subconscious learning, and I think far too much of it out there is, um, you know, putting up signs saying this is a phrasal verb, and this
Hmm.
is,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just forgetting it, just forgetting that you're learning the language. You just happen to be watching the video in that
Hmm.
language.
Hmm.
It's difficult to do, and obviously, I think the
Yeah.
high point where he talks about compelling is probably it's a high bar, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially doing a video for intermediate learners online. But you have to try and make it as interesting and um, worth sitting through without, and again, forgetting that what you're interested in is the subject or the topic.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Not, yeah,
Yeah, it is a bit of a challenge, especially with beginners, super beginners, because
yeah,
we're adults, so
mm, yeah.
like you said,
And
we're
I think,
interested in philosophy, but
yeah,
it's hard to talk about philosophy in a beginner
yeah,
video, right?
yeah. No, I think that's the way off before I'd even think about doing that. But I think sometimes it's things like story learning, which I think is great for language learning. But I think sometimes adults are like, well, I don't want to, I don't hear a
Yeah.
story. Whereas it's such a good way, and it's a good way of forgetting as well, because it does have that element of whether you like it or not, however old you are, you're watching someone telling a story, even if you're like, oh, well, I'm not sure about this, but you're still like, yeah, but I need to know what happens, because
Yeah.
that's who we are, right? We
Yeah.
like a narrative, and we like to know where it goes. Um, but yeah, I think there tends to be too much focus on language and I know that sounds ironic, like in language learning
It
videos,
is, it
but
is, it is.
yeah, that's kind of not the point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I think that works for a lot of subjects in life, not just languages. But that's another topic. I
yeah,
mean, like
that's another, yeah,
not focusing on language or whatever you're trying to learn, but on
yeah,
the topic itself,
yeah.
right?
No, I know what you're saying.
And
Yeah,
learning it as a byproduct or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Cool.
So that was fun, Dylan. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
it's great to meet you. Thank you very much for having me.
And yeah, it's been a pleasure. And well, you mentioned your channel. It'll be in the description and everything. So if people want to check it out, you've got stories, you've got games, um, different
Yeah,
fun stuff to try to teach the language
yeah,
with the British accent, like your channel suggests.
indeed.
And yeah, again, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much for watching this interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful for you. And if you want to know more about language learning, language acquisition, like, what's the best way to learn a language, ideas for language learning, the best resources at different levels. Here, you can find the whole playlist with all the interviews I've done so far with different researchers, teachers, polyglots, and so on. And finally, right here, you smash this guy right in the face to subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.